Let me all remind you that YFN Lucci is also on trial for murder, along with
when
the
does
other
that trial
YFN
start?
guys. That starts on the same day that the YSL
Oh,
trial
so it's not
starts.
going to be starting that. Probably.
Now, is that so, George? In your opinion, is that coincidental?
It is.
Is it okay?
No, it is. It's just bad luck.
It's going to be a lot of jury
And
picking. Don't
honestly,
pick
I
me.
think they may end up having to shift days and postpone something because, I mean, there were 60 sheriff's deputies in court. I mean, there were 19 defendants in the court on Thursday. There were 25 sheriff's deputies in the room and another 20 or so outside, SWAT tactical gear, because the potential for violence in that courthouse. I don't think that. Let me back up for a second. We're like this Fulton County Sheriff's Office and this courthouse has not forgotten the Brian Nichols case.
Okay.
And that's when, like about 20 years ago, a guy who was mad about like being on trial pulled a gun and shot 4 people dead and then took off, and there was a giant manhunt.
Yeah.
Yep. I was in like first grade when that happened, second grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like this, everybody's wired for thou shalt not have an act of violence in this courthouse ever again.
Right.
Yeah.
Problem is, never mind the 28 defendants and their counsel and their families, but the families of all of the victims, and there are probably 3 or 4 families for every person in that room,
Yeah.
all have a legal right to be in the courthouse watching this go down.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a closed trial, or are they going to be?
Oh, it's open.
I don't like that. I don't like that they're making it public. They're making this public to people to film, and it's dangerous for people that live in the community, the families of the victims.
So
That
the
doesn't make
district
sense.
attorney has asked that there be no video. That's not going to happen. There will be video. The big argument right now is whether or not they'll be able to video witnesses, and that hasn't been resolved yet. But I'm a believer in an open trial. Like closed courtrooms are when things happen that we should be looking at.
Right. News and Talk 1380 WALK, voice in the streets unfiltered. Again, if you're just tapping in on the Odyssey app, what up? We are talking to George Chidi, journalist extraordinaire, about crime in Atlanta, the YSL case, what's going on. George, before we went to break, you started to allude to there's some things that we do need to talk about. Go ahead and bring that up for me.
Right. So there's a legal liability here that's entirely separate from the criminal case. YSL, the label, was purchased by Warner Music last year, or earlier this year, I should say, for I think it was $300 million. There are 3 big labels. They all have rappers. Some of those rappers are involved in legal problems like this. Like what we don't talk about is lawsuits. If YSL is both a gang and a label, then it opens the door to the question, is the label on the financial hook for damages related to what YSL, the gang, or any other gang that's also a label, has done? And in perspective, in 2017, there was a shooting at the Masquerade in November. 2 people, rappers, were killed.
I remember that.
There was a trial, for monetary damages, and the families of those rappers sued Sony Entertainment as well as the Masquerade, and they were given a judgment earlier this week of $160 million.
Yikes.
So that's still got to be appealed, and Sony didn't defend. And I suspect that's because their argument is we're not liable. We're not going to show up here because that would imply that we have something to defend. But if trap and gangster rap and drill and all of the other genres of rap that involve music that's adjacent to violence turns into a legal question and a legal liability for money, I wonder at what point the music
The label
labels
could be held liable.
Right. When do the labels become liable, and when do they actually start changing their practices in order to limit their legal liability? Stop signing guys who are just coming out of jail. I'm going to bail you out, and here's $50,000 in a chain. Like, looking at you, Gucci Mane, when I say that. This may change music. And so when you've got Gunna standing in court saying YSL is both a gang and a label, and when you have somebody like like Slime Life Shoddy saying the same thing, and arguably others who are gonna plea out saying the same thing. Let me tell you, if you are a victim of violence related to this YSL YFN war, and you're hearing this broadcast, you should probably consider calling a lawyer right now, because you almost certainly have an actionable legal case that you didn't a week ago. The Donovan Nut Thomas's family arguably could sue over this, or any of the other victims. Like YFN Lucci's mother was shot, and so was, I think, either his aunt or a friend of hers. I don't know. They have a legal case right now against YSL, the label, which now has a very deep pocket. Like, because Warner has a $1 billion business.
That's crazy.
That's deep.
So where do we go from here, George? Like, do we just keep an eye out on where the case is gonna go when it starts trial? Is there any way, based on what you've seen, that they can beat it? Or is
this the end of the music? Can this be the end of them being able to put out music?
Yeah.
Well, that's an excellent question. I'm not going to speculate on the music because music is weird.
They got a lot of music already made, probably.
Like, I'm sure everybody's got a bunch of stuff in the can.
Yeah.
The liability questions, that's a thing. I know a lot of people are asking whether or not Gunna is going to be able to make music. I'm sure he will. Honestly,
I think he's in the studio right now.
I would hope so. The thing I'm watching for, I don't care about the music, believe it or not. I write for Rolling Stone, I say, and I don't actually care about the music as much as I care about whether or not this changes, like, the nature of violence in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it might. The problem is that the underlying causes of violence in Atlanta haven't fundamentally changed. Like, people are still getting shot because Cleveland Avenue is still poor. And until Cleveland Avenue gentrifies, I'm not even sure that's not going to change it. The people who are growing up poor need to find wealth and resources.
Yeah.
When that happens, this goes away. Otherwise, they're just going to be replaced by the next Raised on Cleveland turns into 30 Deep, which turns into YSL, which turns into whatever else.
Yeah. All right. So, George, tell the people how they can find you, how they can follow you, how they can get in contact with you.
Look for me at the atlantaobjective.substack.com. I'm on Twitter probably for another 2 weeks before Elon Musk makes me quit everything. My Twitter handle is Neon Flag. And I'm on Post at the Atlanta Objective and at George Chidi.